Over the past week, there have been several stories indicating that we may be facing an economic collapse. At the very least, we are in an economic crisis. But some are writing that the global inflation runaway train is indicating a collapse could be underway. Recently, we saw the story basically everywhere. Food prices are higher than they've been in decades. Precipitating this was the food shortages, which of course still exist. In fact, I went out to buy a Christmas tree the other day, and we had a hard time of it. Why? We're being told there's a Christmas tree shortage. There's a labor shortage, of course. We're now getting another indicator. The producer price index rose at its fastest pace on record, 9.6%. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because there are individuals like, we here at Timcast who are relatively nonpartisan. I know a lot of people are going to recoil and say, that's a ridiculous statement, Tim. You hate the Democrats. You love the Republicans. I've never been a Republican. I've never been a big fan of the Republicans, but I can tell you this. When Florida is doing very well and they're defying the mandates, when the Democrats consistently lock people down and defy their own rules, it is not about party. It is about what is happening before our very eyes. So please, we need you to wake up. The Republican Party is garbage. Their policies are trash, but some of their policies, at least as it pertains to the COVID pandemic, have worked out fairly well. While Donald Trump did have a bad plan, in my opinion, 15 days to slow the spread, he was on board with, and that turned into a year and a half, longer technically, because we're still in it to a certain degree. Joe Biden and the Democratic governors have pushed this. And due to their policies, particularly around stimulus spending, we are now dealing with this inflation crisis, which may run away, grow out of control, and result in something worse than we have ever seen in terms of a depression. This is not to say vote Republican. Maybe in the primaries, but I tell you this, primary Democrats or Republicans, vote for who you think makes the most sense. This is just to say you need to pay attention to what's happening around you. Food prices are through the roof, and we warned all of you about this. It's not about party. It's about during the mass spending from the Democrats who have narrow control of the federal government. We all said, what I mean by we, it's the anti-establishment type. It's the populists, many on the left and the right, though mostly on the right, but not the establishment Republican types. We've been saying they keep spending like this, the costs will skyrocket. And sooner or later, you won't be able to buy food. We saw that report. Remember, General Mills said they're going to raise their prices by 20% in January. We now have fears of a global economic crisis. But if you were to pay attention to how the media has covered basically everything, the craziest thing to me is that news outlets that tend to be on the side of the establishment political party have been wrong on everything. Literally everything. Okay, not literally, but mostly everything. I have one story I want to show you. They keep saying things won't happen. They keep saying inflation, transitory. Even Jack Dorsey of Twitter tweets out transitory in quotes. They said it's just because we're being released from the lockdowns. Everyone's going to go out and spend, but prices will go back down. That made no sense. It was a lie. Why? A lie to appease you. They are burning down the country. They know what they're doing. I can show you one chart that should make you realize what's happening, and you need to pay attention. Again, to stress, do not listen to the Mitch McConnells, do not listen to the Lindsey Grahams or the Nancy Pelosi's or the Chuck Schumers. The establishment party is not here for you. They are here to burn this country to the ground and extract whatever they can. Now, I want to show you this, the M1 money supply. This current chart starts with March 1986, my lifetime. And I want you to see how there is a major spike in the money supply. They are printing like crazy. Inflation is through the roof, and this will destroy our economy, make it impossible for you to save. And now we have Bloomberg telling people just spend your paycheck as fast as you can because we're dealing with runaway inflation. Let me show you the news and break down what's going on to better help you be informed, maybe figure out some strategies to navigate this crisis. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member if you would like to support our work here at Timcast. That includes these videos, as well as the Timcast IRL podcast, our new show, Pop Culture Crisis, and Tales from the Inverted World. And I'm not going to, I'll put in the link I'll put a link in the description, but we have a new book out that we're going to start from Tales from the Inverted World, Mysteries, Ghosts, Paranormal. Help support our work by becoming a member. We have a lot of journalists working hard on all of these stories. But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this show if you really do like it, post it to social media. Let's read the first story, and I'm going to try and break down for you what this means for you. CNBC reports, wholesale prices measure rose 9.6% in November from a year ago, the fastest pace on record. They say, the producer price index for final demand increased 9.6 over the previous 12 months after rising another 0.8% in November. Excluding food, energy, and trade services prices, excluding food, energy, and trade service prices rose 0.7% for the month, putting core PPI at 6.9%, also the largest gain on record. Estimates were for respective gains of 0.4 and 7.2, meaning the monthly gain was faster than estimates, but the year-over-year measure was a bit slower. Don't let that deceive you. Those numbers come with headline consumer prices running at their fastest pace in nearly 40 years, and core inflation the hottest in about 30 years. This means your paycheck will not buy you what you worked to produce. If you work to produce, let's very, very simplify everything. You work on an apple farm. Your labor produces 10 apples. You should be able to buy at least 9 apples because, some of those profits go to the business to help maintain costs, right? It's not going to even cover this. As time goes on, because of rapid inflation, what you get paid will not buy you the equivalent of your own labor output. They say demand for goods continued to be the biggest driver for producer prices, rising 1.2% for the month, a touch slower than the 1.3 October increase. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on hard numbers. You need only know certain things, like this one from CNBC. Consumer inflation rises at fastest pace in nearly 40 years. 5 experts weigh in. Let me explain. It is not about current inflation. Don't get caught up in the official reports. What you need to know, with the fastest pace on records for producers and consumers, we are watching the tsunami come in. You're standing on the shoreline. And here's what you need to understand. Tsunamis is a great analogy. They say that before a tsunami, the water line recedes a great deal. And there are creepy videos where people are at the beach and they see the water just get sucked out to sea. And the shoreline just drops back by 300 feet. And people are like, whoa, look at this. The water is all gone. And all of a sudden the water comes rushing back. But tsunamis don't crest. There's not a big wave like you see in those paintings or those pictures. It's literally just the water goes up very rapidly. And then before you realize it, it's pouring over. It's shoving cars. Cars are drifting down the streets. Water is slamming into buildings at a high rate of speed. So what's happened now? The pandemic and the lockdowns. That was the water receding. We all watched it happen. We watched businesses get shut down. We saw the government spend like crazy. And now these stories, you need to prepare for what may come. Talk to a financial advisor. It ain't me. But what this means is you are now watching the water start rushing back in. The inflation is here. In a few months, it's gonna get worse. By this time next year, it may be very, very bad. I don't know for sure, but there is no sign of this slowing. There may be an intervention, but I need only show you this chart once again. I pulled this up in the introduction, but this is the St. Louis Fed M1 money stock chart. My life, March 1986. They say there was 641 billions of dollars. $641 billion. Is that what it is? Billions? $641 billion. I guess that's how you'd say it, right? Then we can see over time, the number does gradually increase rather steadily. By 2008, we can see it's doubled to 1,601 billions of dollars. From the time that I was born till the economic collapse, the money supply doubled. And it's a long period of time. I mean, 2008, I'm, in my 20s now, and I'm about 20. I think at this point I'm 22. Now take a look at this. When the pandemic hit, this line right here, that's the tsunami. You see, at this point, they decided to change the reporting metric to say that savings accounts could now be included in the money supply. It used to be that you could only transfer 6 times from your savings to your checking once a month because savings accounts were not considered to be money supply. It was savings. You save it for a rainy day. Typically, they had pretty good interest rates, but not really all that great. Well, when they released this, the entire money supply instantly increased by a massive order. From 4,000 billions of dollars in the money supply to 16,000. They opened the floodgates. That was the tsunami coming in. That was the dam breaking. Now, a lot of people have said to me, Tim, you don't understand. They just changed the reporting. It's not a massive increase in the money supply. That is incorrect. Since they opened the dam, since the dam broke, and we saw in May of 2020 a hard jump from April to 4,000 billions to May 16,000 billions. Since then, we have seen a massive increase. From May of 2020 to June of 2020, there was a jump of around 300 billions. To July, it went to it went up about where are we at? Let's just try to take this. And up about 500. By October, it was up over $1,000 billion in the money supply, $1 trillion. Now, the reason I show you my lifetime in this chart is because from 1986 till the economic collapse, there was not even an increase of $1 trillion. It was $800 billion. But in the span of only a few months, we've accomplished that. From May of 2020 into May of 2021, it jumped by $3 trillion. And now, from where we are today, from May 2020 to October 2021, we are now at 20 trillion or 20,000 billions of dollars. The Democrats' plan is to spend 2.5 trillion more. Joe Biden put out a statement saying, we always pay our debts, so I'm signing an increase to the debt ceiling. Taking out another credit card. The death spiral is here. The economic collapse is here. We're staring at it in the face. Inflation is bad now. We're just now seeing the ramifications of what started in May of 2020. What do you think is going to happen by May of 2022? What do you think is going to happen? If there is a delayed reaction and the tsunami is coming in, we could be seeing inflation at 10%. Now, let's be real. Max Kaiser is a Bitcoin guy, and I believe he created the Hollywood Stock Exchange. He's one of the forefathers of online stock trading. And he told us on Timcast IRL that inflation was around 15% when it was being reported at like 4 or 5%. And he said the reason they're saying that they're lying is because if they really did admit that inflation was around 15%, they'd have to increase Social Security and other benefits, and that would crush the federal government. They wouldn't be able to afford it. So they're lying. They're probably lying now. As runaway spending is destroying our economy, what do the Democrats have to say? It's right here. CNBC. Democrats will move to raise the debt ceiling hours before deadline. And don't get me wrong. It's just because the Democrats are in power. Republicans aren't playing their hand to block this. They're not most of them, but enough of the Republicans are on board with this to say, okay, let's do it. Let's roll. So it is many establishment neocon Republicans. It is the establishment Democrats. They're basically saying, burn it all to the ground. CNBC reports. Congressional Democrats will move to raise the debt ceiling Tuesday, one day before the December 15th deadline. The Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned could mark the start of the first ever U.S. default. The effort began in the Senate with a 50-49 party line vote. The bill would then go to the House, et cetera, et cetera. We get it. Democrats unveiled the text of the resolution, which showed a proposed increase of $2.5 trillion. You want to know what really freaked me out a couple months ago? When they announced the U.S. was liquidating its assets to pay its debts. Yeah. I want you to understand this in terms of like your house. When your parents, this is how I responded to Joe Biden saying he was going to increase the debt ceiling. I said, I remember when I was a kid and my parents had to use their credit card to pay bills. It's not indicative of something good. Quite the opposite. When your parents would say, we can't afford the electric bill, just put it on a credit card. You're basically saying sweep it under the rug and that problem will persist. Now you're paying interest on that debt forever. You can pay down the minimums, but if you're using a credit limit to pay your bills, what happens when you reach the limit and you can't pay the next bill? It is a downward spiral that doesn't end well. That's what we are doing in this country. On top of that, we saw that the U.S. was selling off assets to pay its debts. That's the next step in the phase. Well, we've maxed out our credit cards. Time to sell what stuff we have. The U.S. is not doing well. And how long until we run out of stuff to sell? We can't just keep taking out more credit cards and then we default. It's the end of the U.S. empire. There are a lot of people who have consistently defended all of this, who have lied over and over again. Our next story from CNBC. El Arian says, Arian, or how you pronounce it, transitory was the worst inflation call in the history of the Fed. No, it was a lie. And we told you that. What I mean by we is anti-establishment populist individuals. We don't shill for the elites in the establishment. I don't like the neocons. I don't like the neolibs. I'm not even a big fan of Donald Trump. He's just much better than most of them. I like the Mises Caucus. I like Dave Smith, Michael Malice, those guys. But I'm not a fan of the establishment or the elites, nor the billionaires, nor the wealthy. I think they're ripping everyone off. It's a big club. You ain't in it, and neither am I. And I'll mention this again. Siraj last night on IRL said, you must be in the club, Tim. Being successful with your business, well off, does not mean you're in the club. No, they're lying. They're lying to extract as much as they can as they burn the system to the ground. They keep lying to you. Please understand this. They have lied every step of the way. I don't care about Republican talking points. I don't care about Democrat talking points. Every step of the way. They said 15 days to slow the spread. That was Donald Trump, too. What did that turn into? A year and a half. They said, just wear a mask, you'll be fine. Then they said, wear 2 masks. Then they said, okay, it's just until we get the vaccine. Then they said, just get 1 dose of the vaccine and you can go out and do your thing. Then they said, if you're fully vaccinated, you can take your mask off. Then people got fully vaccinated. Then they said, you know what, keep your mask on, actually. Then they said, you know what, 3 boosters. Now we are moving into the phase of a 4th shot with it's BioNTech saying, we need a booster, and the Pfizer CEO saying we probably going to need 4 shots for Omicron. It's not ending. It's increasing. They keep telling you more. And the media along the way has lied and told you everything's okay. Ignore the far-right conspiracy theorists. Far-right. Transitory, they said. Let me give you a non-economic example. This one's been going around. This is from Vice. Anti-vaxxers are terrified the government will enforce a vaccine for coronavirus, February 28th, 2020. Anti-vax groups on social media are claiming that the spread of the disease will lead to mandatory vaccinations and unlimited surveillance. And then, July 27th, 2021, from Vice News. COVID vaccine mandates are coming, so get used to it. They lied to you. They told you it wouldn't happen. Just comply and everything will go back to normal. For nearly 2 years, they have said, comply and everything will go back to normal. But it hasn't. It's only gotten worse. They told you mass spending will not lead to inflation. And now it's here. They said, don't worry, that inflation was just transitory. It's going to go away. It's just because we're reopening. That was a lie. They said, don't worry, inflation is good for you. It means your wages will go up. It's bad for the 1%. That was a lie. Now food prices are the highest they've been in decades. And I'm already hearing from people saying they can't afford cereal for their children. They lied over and over again. Here's a story from Live Mint. They're carrying it from the Wall Street Journal. What is causing inflation right now? The current bout of inflation has several identified causes, many of them linked to the pandemic. For one, consumers are flush with savings from government stimulus programs and depressed services spending from restrictions on businesses, leading them to open the spigot for goods that are in scarce supply. You see the important part there? They said the mass spending and stimulus would not lead to inflation. They said we need to do it. But the bill comes due always. Either you pay now or you pay later. Paying later costs more. They go on to mention energy prices, including gasoline, have gone up as oil and gas production lags behind a return of consumer demand coming out of the pandemic. And Joe Biden shut down Keystone XL, and he put a ban on fracking on federal lands and some public lands. Now, a lot of people have correctly pointed out they lied to you again. They manipulate through framing. Hey. All of these conspiracy theorists saying Keystone had anything to do with this is lying because Keystone wasn't carrying crude. It wasn't built yet. Shutting it down did nothing. That's a lie. With the shuttering of the Keystone pipeline, you had many people who now said, if we don't get Keystone up and running, in the next 10 years, we will not have the supply required to meet demand. Therefore, With high demand and a low supply, prices will go up. This caused people to do one of two things. Either they said, buy now because it's not going to be available in a few years, or people said, speculate because that price is going to go up and we can sell, baby. Now, that last one's exploitation. I'm not a fan of. Knowing that the supply is going to be constrained, so you buy in and hoard something so you can jack up the price when demand hits and then sell it off. I don't like that. I don't like stock trading. I don't like any of that stuff. But people are allowed to trade what they want to trade. It exists. However, a big factor in this, quite simply put, is that many people just said, with the shuttering of fracking, we are not going to be energy independent. We will have too much demand on gas, especially with the reopening of, the country and the end of the lockdowns, which are still somewhat in place. Demand will spike, prices will go up, and that was Joe Biden's doing. They go on to say, the return of demand has led to supply chain disruptions. Truck drivers, seaport slots, and warehouse spaces are all in short supply, leading to costly delays and rising shipping rates for goods. Yeah, people are quitting across the board in a lot of ways. There is a single-digit collapse in the labor market, which is specifically due to vaccine mandates. Now, single-digit may mean 2 or 3%. We often hear this, 97% of our workforce was vaccinated, nothing to worry about. 95% of the truckers are vaccinated. That means a 5% drop-off in an while we're already dealing with a labor shortage. We can't deal with another one. They lie. Food is more expensive than it has been in decades, and that's hurting you. From WSFA 12 News, labor shortages, supply chain issues affecting retailers. Now, of course, there's limited supply and massive demand. From Eyewitness News 3, natural gas shortage, supply chain issues could result in rolling blackouts in New England. You kidding me? Rolling blackouts in New England? The energy crisis is going to get worse. Nord Stream 2, Joe Biden giving this power to the Russians. We're going to see it across the board. Now we're dealing with a bunch of other really weird stuff, too. You thought prices were bad now? Supply chain is worse than you realize. You see, people think the supply chain means there's no toilet paper. No, it means things like this. From the New York Times. This chemical is in short supply, and the whole world feels it. Farmers in India are desperate. Trucks in South Korea had to be idled. Food prices already high could rise even further. A chemical. What chemical is that? This story is about one of those unsung forces that quietly keep the world running. It is a story about the clockwork interconnectedness of modern civilization and how disturbances in one part of the planet kick up storms in another. This is a story naturally about urea. Prices for the humble chemical, yes, the stuff in urine, are soaring to levels not seen in over a decade. In this time of everything shortages and inflation worries, that alone might not sound too surprising. But urea links up several disparate-looking strands of global economic disruption, showing how easily extreme weather and shipping turmoil can cause supply shortfalls to radiate. I don't believe the official reasons they're giving for the shortages, to be completely honest. The other day, I was told that the reason there's a tree shortage was due to the 2008 economic crisis. And that may be true. They said when the crisis happened, people didn't have homes. People lost their homes. And if you don't have a home, you don't buy a tree. So farmers stopped planting trees. That to me sounds like it makes no sense. If you don't sell trees, which take 15 years to grow for Christmas, why would you not plant some today? What about today makes you expect there won't be trees to sell in 15 years? No, it sounds to me like there's a labor shortage. We went to one place we went to the place we normally go, and there were trees, but there was no one there. And we walked around like there's nobody here, and we looked it up and said closed. A few other places said closed. We finally found one place that was open and had trees, and we bought some trees. We got 2 trees because we're having a big old double Christmas party. But, the season is we're halfway through December, and a lot of people have already got their trees. But we were told that there is a disruption in the tree supply for Christmas. There was a turkey shortage. We had to buy our turkey in advance. There's chicken wing shortages. So now we're seeing stores market thighs. I got to be honest. Chicken thighs are pretty good. I like them a whole lot. But I went to a restaurant and they said that wings were way expensive, but they did have thighs. And so we ordered a big bowl of thighs. I'd never done that before. We usually just get wings, right? But the disruptions are affecting basically everything. Now, truth be told, we are very well off. Okay, we in the United States are still doing well. But there are a lot of people who are struggling to get by every day, living paycheck to paycheck. And this is what we get. This is what we hear. Bloomberg article mocked for suggesting Americans spend their paycheck immediately to cope with inflation. Last night on Timcast IRL, we talked about this. Mocking Bloomberg, they said, what did people do in Argentina when inflation was at 50%? They got their paychecks and they bought whatever they could immediately. Yeah, that's not a good thing, right? That's a terrible thing. That makes inflation worse. And if that's what we have to do, we are in serious trouble. But it seems like that's where we're at. And so I've said something similar. I've repeatedly said I don't want to hold U.S. dollars. Inflation is through the roof. Spend it, buy what you can. Prices are skyrocketing. Man, guitars I'm looking at are twice the price. You can't go wrong buying whatever you can right now. So I've just been like, whatever we need for the production, let's not wait. Let's buy it now and grow into it. Buy the larger clothes when the kid's growing up. He's 9 years old. You're like, just buy the large and then he'll grow up and then it'll fit him, right? That's the way I'm viewing it right now. Because if you wait, the cost is going to be through the roof. But I did point something out. Bitcoin prices have dropped a lot. They were at like 68,000 and then Bitcoin, fell and then crypto fell. Some crypto prices have gone through the roof. Like Mine's token was at $3.60 this morning. That's massive, a massive gain. And so my view is, for me personally, not for anybody else, maybe what you can do is, let's take this Bloomberg article that says spend your paycheck immediately to cope with inflation. Maybe they need only put in 2 words after the word immediately and before the word to. And they should write, Americans should spend their paycheck immediately on Bitcoin to cope with inflation. I am not telling you to do that. I have no knowledge of where Bitcoin will go, and the prices have dropped off quite a bit. A lot of people have messaged me saying, should I buy now? Should I buy now? I don't know. I don't. Bloomberg writes, Bitcoin's latest plunge highlights the dangers of a crypto salary. Yeah, but I don't care about its plunge. Personally, I don't care about any. I just bought a bit more crypto, actually, because of inflation and because of this. From the South China Morning Post, November 22nd. Why the global inflation surge could signal an economic collapse. The link between inflation and asset price collapse or debt market implosion might have been forgotten, but it's still there. Policymakers cannot afford to ignore the increasingly shaky state of the foundations on which the global economy rests. Yeah, we're seeing it across the board. Harder to find food, shelves are empty. Certain products you can't get. We've been trying to set up a steel building. This is one of the things we learned with the producer price increase. It's a disaster. Look, our business is a booming. We got more money coming in to hire people and to expand. And one of the goals we've had for the past, year now, was to get a giant steel frame building. I say giant, but 8 to 10,000 square feet. And the problem is nobody has the materials. It's not a matter of price. We're hitting up companies and they say, we can't get that steel for you. Sorry, can't help you. Now, some people have suggested we buy a used building. What they do is they go to an existing building, they dismantle it, move it to where your new space will be, and then build it there. And that's one potential option. But it's crazy to me that, the money's become worthless. I mean it. The money has become effectively worthless. Now, look, I know money is worth something, but what I mean to say is I can't even buy things with it. If I can't get the stuff we need to expand the business, the money just sits there and it doesn't go anywhere. And that's going to just be disruptive for the economy with stagflation, then hyperinflation. I just don't know where things go. Maybe it's good that people stop spending, I suppose, but there's 2 things to consider. If people are spending like crazy, inflation will go way up. If people don't value money at all, inflation will go way up. So I'll put it this way. I call this company, I say, we need a building because we want to do a live studio. We want to do a bigger studio. We are expanding. We're doing more shows. We need better infrastructure. And they say, I can't help you. And then I must respond with, tell me the price to get this done. And that's where the inflation hit is bad. A building that may have cost $200,000, $300,000 a few years ago, now they're saying, look, I'm not going to be bothered with it because it's too expensive. And then I'll say, well, how much, what do we need? They're like, look, steel's up 10%. Throw in another 30 grand. And we go, done, because we have to get it. Otherwise, we do nothing with it. And they say, okay. Now the cost is up 10% for these buildings. I mean, trying to buy a house outside of cities it's a disaster. It's a nightmare. It's crazy. This will reach you. Young millennials and older Gen Z, younger Gen Z, you're not going to own a home. I think most of you know this. Some of you will, but many of you won't. You will not have any property to pass down to your children and people you care about. And as the World Economic Forum says, you will own nothing and you will be happy. I think the reality is you won't be happy, but you will own nothing. And it's going to be due to inflation. You're going to work hard. You're going to get that $15 an hour. They're going to say, we want a $20 an hour increase. And they're going to say, okay. With the supply chain disruption, that $20 an hour, it's going to be able to get you a bedroom that someone else owns. You're going to be able to eat a meal for breakfast and dinner. Probably have to skip lunch, but you'll get enough food, but just enough. And you'll be happy with your $20 an hour, I suppose. You'll be like, I did it. But you still won't be able to buy anything. You won't be able to buy imported goods, TVs, computers, cell phones, and that'll be it. You'll be a service sector employee, $20 an hour. Congratulations. Your buying power will be the equivalent of a cheeseburger every hour. You won't be able to have a family. And perhaps that's what their goal is. What I really think is that the establishment politicians, Republican and Democrat alike, are extracting as much as they can as the ship sinks. Take a look back at the M1 money supply. And this major spike, my friends, the ship is sinking. View this as the water level. And this whole thing is our boat. The water is almost to the top. We are almost completely underwater. So what does that mean? Well, they jumped on the life rats a long time ago. They sold assets. They bought goods. You saw them, playing dirty games with stocks. And here it is. The inflation is bad. I blame the Democrats and many of the Republicans. Here's my request to you. If you're a liberal, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, primary all of these people. Get the incumbents out before it's too late. Midterms are coming up, and I'll leave it there. Next segment will be tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/timcastirl. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.